"Ah, you're going to pay by cleaning toilets," mocked Marcus, the salesman in the starched suit. Laughter echoed through the marble hall, amidst the Ferraris and Lamborghinis. Evelyn clutched her briefcase to her chest, her face burning. She remained silent, but something in her eyes told her the story wouldn't end there. Marcus Thompson was the kind of man who walked into any room believing everyone was there to serve him. He wore a well-tailored Italian suit, a navy silk tie, and shoes that shone brighter than the cars on display in the showroom. His hair, slicked back with gel, didn't have a strand out of place. He spoke loudly on his cell phone, as if the world needed to hear every word. "Seal at 200,000, or there's no deal. Understand, I'm Marcus Thompson. I don't accept crumbs," he said, not caring that customers were watching him. He didn't just sell cars, he sold a lifestyle. He liked to remind everyone that his apartment was in a glass skyscraper in downtown Los Angeles, overlooking the Hollywood sign. Every morning, he ran in the building's gym and made a point of posting selfies with captions like, "Winners wake up early." At the dealership, he treated his co-workers like personal assistants. "Hey, Parker, get me a coffee," he'd often yell, even when he knew Evelyn didn't work there. It was just an excuse to put her down. That morning, the salon was bustling. The glare of the spotlights made the red and black Ferraris sparkle like jewels. Wealthy clients milled about slowly, some in tailored suits, others in designer dresses. The soft sound of jazz filled the room, contrasting with Marcus's ever-present laughter. It was into this scenario that Evelyn entered. She wasn't there to buy anything. She wore simple jeans, a light cotton blouse, and worn shoes. Over her shoulders was a canvas bag. In her hands was the folder containing the documents she needed to deliver to Mr. Williamson, an important client of the firm. As she walked, she seemed invisible amid the glow of the shop windows, but Marcus noticed her immediately. "But look at that," he muttered, straightening his tie and giving a colleague a crooked smile. The Beverly Hills cleaning lady decided to take a stroll through the millionaire's paradise. One of the salespeople chuckled, trying not to attract attention. Evelyn, head held high, took a deep breath and walked to the reception desk. "Good morning, ma'am. I came to deliver these documents to Mr. Williamson. Is he in?" she asked calmly. The receptionist, embarrassed, tried to be polite. "Oh, sure. Just a minute. I'll check," Marcus interrupted, approaching as if he owned the place. "You're lost, dear. This isn't the kind of place for people like you." Evelyn stared at him for a second. She didn't answer. She just clutched the folder tighter to her chest. Her life was different from those of others. She lived in a small apartment in Inglewood, a simple neighborhood full of history. She woke up every morning at 5 a.m., brewed black coffee, and prepared pancakes for her teenage daughter, Grace. Then she took the crowded bus to the houses in Beverly Hills, where she cleaned marble bathrooms and private movie theaters. Grace would often ask her, "Mom, aren't you tired of being treated like you're nobody?" Evelyn smiled, hiding the weight in her heart. "Daughter, we have to be patient. God knows everything." That day, when he entered the dealership, he carried not only documents but also years of dirty looks, jokes, and humiliations. Still, he maintained his dignity. Marcus, however, didn't stop. "Guys, does anyone know where the squeegee and bucket section is?" he teased loudly, drawing laughter from some customers. "I think the lady here came to work." A grey-haired man, a long-time client, frowned at the comment, but preferred not to intervene. Evelyn firmly responded for the first time. "I just want to deliver the documents." Marcus arched his eyebrow in mock surprise. "Documents? You mean to tell me you have business here?" She didn't answer. The receptionist, embarrassed, tried to hurry things along. "Mr. Marcus, please don't disturb me. I'll get Mr. Williamson." Before the girl could type anything, Marcus appeared, leaning his elbow on the counter as if arriving to save the situation. "Mr. Williamson," he smirked. "Are you sure you're in the right place, Ms. Evelyn?" Evelyn held his gaze. I have it. He asked me to deliver it personally. Marcus tilted his head theatrically. Personally. What a coincidence. Mr. Williamson only sees VIP clients personally. Are you a VIP client? The receptionist tried to intervene. Mr. Marcus, I can check his calendar. No need, Claire. I know his schedule for the day, she interrupted, pulling her phone out of her pocket. And guess what? There's no document delivery around here. Evelyn took a deep breath. He called me yesterday. His voice was, well, it was him, yes. He asked me to bring the papers. Marcus made an exaggerated, And what would be the subject of these important papers? She clutched the folder to her chest. Documents from Mrs. Wellington. Some clients, upon hearing the surname familiar to Los Angeles high society, discreetly turned their heads. Marcus noticed, but didn't flinch. On the contrary, he smiled wider. Mrs. Wellington, of course, he said, as if teasing a child. And you're a lawyer, a consultant. What? I just need to deliver. Marcus tapped his finger on the counter, each tap growing more impatient. Look, Evelyn, this is Beverly Hills Motors, not the building concierge. We work with schedules, protocols, and client profiles. If Mr. Williamson wanted something, he would have let me know. I'm his salesman. The receptionist, annoyed, insisted, Mr. Marcus, I can call Mr. Williamson's assistant. It will take 2 minutes. Claire, please, he whispered, without taking his eyes off Evelyn. Don't stir up this confusion. Evelyn straightened a little. I'm not a mess. I'm just doing my job. Marcus gave a short, humorless laugh. What job? Because here, the job is something else. A tense silence. The hum of the air conditioning and the low jazz music in the background grew louder. A young couple, holding hands, pretended to look inside a 296 GTB, but they were watching the scene through the reflection in the glass. A security guard appeared a few steps away, simply observing. Can I speak to the manager? Evelyn asked, and still calm. You can, Marcus replied, but he'll ask me first, and I'll tell him you're lost. The receptionist bit her lip, defeated by the hierarchy. Mr. Marcus, I'd better... No, Claire, I'll take care of it. He turned back to Evelyn, as if offering her a last chance. Do you really want this meeting with Mr. Williamson? Okay. Give me the folder. I'll give it to him. Sorry, Evelyn said, but he asked me to deliver it in person. The firmness, even politely said, made Marcus narrow his eyes. Personally, he repeated louder. Personally? How? Do you have an invitation to the VIP mezzanine? Evelyn shook her head. I only have his word for it. Marcus took a dramatic breath, like a teacher tired of a stubborn student. His word. Right. Then let's try something else. He pointed to the glass doors. Oh, the sun is strong outside. Maybe you should wait outside on the bench while I check. I prefer to stay here. The small resistance became fuel. Look, Evelyn, you can prefer whatever you want, but this area is for clients. The waiting room is over there. He indicated a row of chairs further away, almost hidden. Evelyn didn't move. I'm not taking up anyone's space. I'll finish this and leave. Marcus leaned in, lowering his voice as if offering friendly advice. Take this. Leave it to me and avoid embarrassment. Everyone wins. The word embarrassment hung in the air, heavier than it should have. Evelyn felt her hand sweat on the handle of her briefcase. She thought about her daughter, about the bus rides, about how many times she'd swallowed hard to avoid missing a day's work. She looked around. Marble, glass, chrome. People who knew nothing about her, deciding who could and couldn't be there. I'm not leaving, he said firmly, but without raising his voice. I'll wait for Mr. Williamson. If you're his salesman, great. Call him. I'll talk to both of you. Marcus forced a smile. Sure. Let's call then. He took out his phone, swiped the screen as if he were about to dial. and stopped. Instead of dialing, he opened the front camera, checked his hair, and adjusted his tie. You know what, Evelyn? Clients of this caliber don't like surprises. You understand, right? It's a matter of image. Image of whom? She asked. He didn't answer. He put away his phone and gestured discreetly to the security guard with 2 fingers. Mike, keep the area tidy. Please, some people want to turn the reception area into a post office. The security guard hesitated, assessing the scene. Evelyn noticed the movement and stepped forward. No need to call anyone. I am not causing any trouble. I just want to deliver this folder to whoever asked for it. The grey-haired man, the one from before, cleared his throat and said, "Tired of watching. Boy, if the girl said someone asked, call and confirm. It won't cost anything." Marcus gave a cold smile. "Of course, sir. We value procedures." He then leaned over to the receptionist. "Claire, call Williamson's assistant. But please explain that we have an unforeseen issue here." Claire picked up the phone with trembling fingers. "Well, good morning, Trevor. This is Claire from Beverly Hills Motors. Oh, yes, okay. Look, there's a lady named Evelyn Parker saying she needs to deliver documents to Mr. Williamson. Yes, I understand." Evelyn's heart pounded in her temples. Marcus, arms crossed, savoured every second of the wait. "Okay, thanks," Claire said. Hanging up, she looked at Evelyn in surprise. "Mr. Williamson is on the mezzanine. He asked you to come up. He said he'll come down and get you." Marcus's smile faded from his face. "Is he coming down?" "Yes," Claire confirmed. "He said he knows Mrs. Wellington." Evelyn let go of the briefcase a little, as if the weight had lessened. Marcus tried to compose himself. "Great, excellent. So," he spread his arms, performing, "Let's wait for the VIP." The glass elevator in the background emitted a soft ding. The door hadn't opened yet, but that sound had already changed the pressure in the room. Eyes turned. Evelyn remained standing, not hiding. Marcus straightened his tie again. The game, for the first time, seemed to be out of his hands, and that, for him, was unforgivable. The glass elevator doors opened slowly. Mr. Williamson, a tall, grey-haired man in an impeccable suit, descended with firm steps. The entire room fell silent for a moment. Evelyn took a deep breath, but before he could reach her, Marcus anticipated her again. "Let me guess," he said loudly, attracting everyone's attention. "You came here dreaming of having a car like that." Some customers chuckled softly. Evelyn felt the blood rush to her cheeks, but she kept her chin up. "Or maybe offer your cleaning services," Marcus continued, looking around as if expecting applause. The laughter grew louder. 2 young customers began discreetly filming with their cell phones. Evelyn noticed, her stomach churning. "Seriously," Marcus insisted, "how are you going to pay for a car like that? By cleaning toilets?" The room erupted in laughter. The sound echoed between the glass and the marble, as if each laugh were a hammer blow to Evelyn's chest. She clutched her briefcase to her body, her breath shallow, feeling as if she were shrinking before everyone's eyes. "Marcus," the receptionist tried to scold, "that's unnecessary." "Relax, Claire. We're just having fun," he replied, winking at the customers. One of the salespeople behind Marcus whispered, laughing, "I think she came to give a price on the wheel." Evelyn closed her eyes for a second, trying to hold back the tears. She remembered waking up early in the morning to the crowded bus, her calloused hands, her daughter studying with used books. How many times had she been reduced to nothing in places like that? "And you shouldn't talk to anyone like that," he finally murmured, his voice choked but firm. "Oh, look at that!" Marcus raised his arms. "The cleaning lady decided to lecture me." A stylish couple, standing near a blue Ferrari, exchanged awkward glances. The grey-haired man who had previously defended Evelyn cleared his throat again. "Boy, that's enough. You're crossing the line." Marcus gave a cold smile. "I'm just being realistic, sir. This is Beverly Hills Motors. It's not a non-profit, it's not a charity. If Mrs. Parker wants to be in this environment, she needs to understand the rules. Williamson, who had been watching from a few feet away, stopped, crossed his arms, and remained silent, studying the scene. Evelyn noticed his gaze, but she couldn't tell if it was good or bad. Her heart was pounding like a drum. Every laugh, every sidelong glance, felt like a push out of that place. But something inside her refused to give in. Not anymore. She opened her eyes firmly, staring at Marcus. "Is it over?" she asked, her voice low but sharp. Marcus lifted his chin confidently. "Finish? No, Evelyn? I've only just begun." The laughter still echoed through the hall when Evelyn closed her eyes for a moment. Her heart pounded in her temples, but instead of cringing, she lifted her head. She felt her breathing even out, as if a silent strength had arisen within her. Suddenly, the laughter began to sound more distant, almost muffled. She took 2 steps forward. The sound of her shoes hitting the marble seemed louder than everyone else's laughter. The entire room craned its necks to follow her. Evelyn walked calmly to the center of the showroom, where a red Ferrari 488 GTB gleamed in the spotlight. The paintwork reflected the glass roof, the chandeliers, and even the surprised expressions of those present. She stopped in front of the car, gently rested her hand on the hood, and looked intently at Marcus. "I want this one." The sentence came out simple, but heavy as thunder. For a second, no one reacted. It was as if time had frozen. Even the hum of the air conditioning seemed to fade. Then Marcus blinked in disbelief and gave a loud, mocking laugh. "That one?" He pointed theatrically with the palm of his hand. "Ma'am, that Ferrari costs $350,000. He laughed, looking around as if expecting everyone to follow suit. "Not everyone here can afford that, and you, with all due respect, don't seem to fit the bill." The words were spoken slowly, sharp as a knife. But Evelyn didn't back down. She placed the leather briefcase on the gleaming hood, calmly unlatched it, and lifted the lid. Inside was a stack of signed checks, legitimate checks, for large amounts, some already stamped. The hall fell silent. The air seemed thicker. "I know exactly how much it costs," Evelyn said firmly. "And here are the checks." She turned the folder slightly so that everyone could see it. The receptionist, open-mouthed, put her hand to her mouth. "My God, it's real." A young couple, filming the scene with their cell phones, looked at each other in disbelief. One of the young men muttered, "This can't be real." Marcus, his mouth dry, tried to laugh again, but the sound came out forced and nervous. "Is this some kind of prank? Who brings checks like that in 2025? Evelyn didn't answer. She just held up one of them, displaying the signature. "Can you read a signature, Mr. Thompson?" The name on the paper made some customers frown. It was unmistakable. Margaret Wellington. Williamson, who had been watching silently from the start, finally approached. He extended his hand, excused himself, and took one of the checks. He looked at it carefully, then looked up at Marcus. "It's in order." "Do you know her?" Marcus asked, swallowing hard. Williamson adjusted his glasses and crossed his arms. "Of course I do. Evelyn Parker was a personal friend of Mrs. Wellington's." A murmur ran through the room. The surname Wellington did not go unnoticed. Everyone in Los Angeles knew who Margaret Wellington was, the billionaire philanthropist who supported social causes and had recently passed away. Evelyn closed the folder unhurriedly. Her eyes were steady, and her voice, for the first time that day, carried a tone of victory. "I worked at her house for 20 years, and now this Ferrari is mine." Marcus looked smaller than ever. The arrogant smile was gone. He tried to justify himself, stumbling over his words. I didn't know. I couldn't imagine." Evelyn looked at him serenely. "That's the problem, Marcus. You never try to imagine. You just judge." The receptionist, overcome with emotion, discreetly wiped the corner of her eye. One of the customers, who had been smiling before, turned away, embarrassed. The silence in the showroom was almost suffocating. The store manager, Mr. Mitchell, who had been watching transfixed, hurried over, trying to regain control of the situation. Mrs. Parker, on behalf of Beverly Hills Motors, it would be an honor to complete this sale. Evelyn handed him the folder. I want to make the payment now. Mitchell nodded, almost bowing. Of course, Ma'am. I'll get all the paperwork ready right away. Marcus took a few steps back, unsure where to look. His face was flushed, his hands sweating. The man he loved to humiliate was now the one being humiliated. Evelyn finally cracked a smile, not one of arrogance, but of knowing she'd won something much bigger than an argument. She ran her hand over the Ferrari's hood, feeling the cool, smooth surface. I don't need to prove anything to anyone, he said, his voice echoing throughout the room. But since you doubted, now everyone will see. The entire room seemed to hold its breath. There's in front of everyone. The woman who moments before had been ridiculed became the master of the scene, the master of the narrative, and soon the owner of the most imposing Ferrari in the dealership. Manager Mitchell disappeared for a moment, taking the briefcase containing the checks. The room remained silent, as if everyone was digesting the scene. Evelyn took a deep breath. She felt this was the time to explain, to show herself completely, not just as the employee everyone saw. Marcus, still without color in his face, muttered softly, "This doesn't make sense." Evelyn looked him in the eye, serene. "It makes perfect sense. You just never asked." Williamson leaned closer, as if to make it clear he was on her side. "Mrs. Parker deserves all the respect." Margaret Wellington spoke of her as part of the family. A buzz grew among the customers. Evelyn, for the first time, spoke loudly enough for everyone to hear. 20 years of my life were dedicated to that house. I took care of the children, the garden, the dogs, and yes, also the marble bathrooms that you so often think define me. A curious younger customer asked, "But how did you get so much money?" Evelyn took a deep breath, her voice trembling slightly but full of truth. "Mrs. Wellington left me an inheritance. She said I deserved more than anyone ever gave me." Claire, the receptionist, put her hand to her chest. "Did she really leave all this to you?" Evelyn nodded. "Not everything, but enough for me to start over." She paused. "And don't think I didn't have another life. Before I was a maid, I was an accountant." Marcus looked up in surprise. "Accountant?" "Yes, graduated. I worked at a respected company in downtown LA until 2008. The memory made her voice waver. "The crisis took my job, my savings, my marriage. I had a young daughter and no support network. I took what came my way. Cleaning was what sustained me." A heavy silence fell. Some customers looked away, embarrassed. "I worked in mansions where no one knew my name. I was the cleaning lady. No one asked about my life. They only saw the uniform, not the woman." Evelyn clasped her hands. "Mrs. Wellington was different. She always asked about my daughter, always treated me like a human being." Williamson nodded. "Margaret spoke of you with pride." Evelyn. "She said you had more dignity than many of those who attended her parties." Tears stung Evelyn's eyes, but she remained steadfast. "When she passed away, she took me aside and days before and said, 'You took care of me, my home, my family. Now it's my turn to take care of you.'" Claire moved, whispered almost without realizing it, "How beautiful." Marcus, trying to regain some ground, stammered, I didn't know that story." Evelyn sighed. "That's the problem, Marcus. You never know. You look and you already decide who the person is." He looked down, unable to answer. Evelyn looked around, speaking not only to Marcus, but to everyone who silently judged her. "I'm not just a cleaner. I'm a mother, an accountant, a survivor. I spent nights crying from exhaustion. But I got up every morning at 5 to ensure my daughter had a future, and I'll keep fighting for that. With or without a Ferrari." The entire room went silent. Even the ambient jazz seemed to have disappeared. A white-bearded gentleman, a regular customer, approached slowly. "Mrs. Parker, I want to tell you that you taught me a lesson today. I've treated people like they're invisible, and I'm ashamed of it." Evelyn smiled kindly. "It's never too late to change." Marcus's silent seemed smaller than ever. The same man who had been joking just minutes before now stared at the ground, lost. Williamson placed his hand on her shoulder. "Evelyn, Margaret would be smiling right now." The tears finally flowed. She didn't hide them. "I just wanted to be seen, not as the cleaning lady, but as someone who also has value." Mitchell returned with a folder of contracts and a small black box in his hands. He stood before Evelyn with a respect the entire room sensed. "Mrs. Parker, first, congratulations, and," he took a breath, "on behalf of Beverly Hills Motors, I apologize for what happened here. It doesn't represent who we are." Evelyn nodded, her eyes still moist. "Thank you, Mr. Mitchell." He opened the box. Inside, the Ferrari key, metallic, gleaming under the lights. "Our cars are about power and beauty, but today you reminded everyone that dignity is what truly matters. So, in addition to the car, I want to offer full VIP service for a year, maintenance, concierge, premium wash, spare car, at no cost." A murmur of approval ran through the showroom. Claire smiled from behind the counter. "And one more thing," Mitchell continued, "you'll have exclusive service from me whenever you need it. No lines, no waiting. Just call. My personal cell phone number will be on the card." He held out the card. Evelyn took it carefully. "I appreciate it. I really do." Marcus, pale, stepped forward. His hands were still shaking. "Mrs. Parker," his voice trailed off. "I'm sorry. I overstepped my bounds. I was arrogant. I didn't ask you anything about your story. I just judged." Evelyn looked at him calmly. "Why?" Marcus closed his eyes for a second. "Because it's easier to laugh first than to understand later. I've worked here for years, and I thought I knew how to read people. Today you proved to me that I don't. Forgive me." She was silent, measuring her words. "An apology is a start." Marcus swallowed hard. "I want to fix it. If you agree, I'll personally handle every detail of your car experience. I'll deliver it to your home, explain everything, and check whatever needs to be done. No lame excuses, just real service." Mitchell cut him off, firmly, but with a nod of agreement. "And it will start today. Marcus, you oversee the delivery, present all the resources, schedule the first review, and ensure that Mrs. Parker leaves here safe and happy. Understood?" "Understood, sir." Williamson, watching closely, walked over and shook Evelyn's hand. "Margaret would be proud of you, and to see this happening here." Evelyn smiled fondly. I can still hear her voice. "Lift your chin, girl." Mitchell calmly went through the pages of the contract, explaining item by item, without rushing, without jargon. "Ceremonial delivery myself. Do you have a preference? Start the car in the salon, or do you prefer it outside?" "Right here," Evelyn said, taking a deep breath. "Perfect." Marcus stepped back, rearranging his shirt. "I'll get the protective cover and the temporary plate." "Thank you, Marcus," Evelyn said, without irony. He nodded, almost relieved to have something useful to do. Mitchell closed the briefcase, took the key, and placed it in Evelyn's hands with an honest smile. "Welcome to the family." The people around applauded, now without guilt, but with respect. It wasn't a show, it was a success. Evelyn stared at the key for a moment, as if looking at a symbol. "I didn't buy a car to silence anyone," she said simply. "I bought it to remind me of who I am." Mitchell smiled broadly. "And to remember who we need to be." He turned to the team. "Everyone, VIP delivery protocol. Lights on red, trail low. Let's do it right." The room stirred. Claire brought a discreet bouquet. A technician adjusted the lighting to highlight the Ferrari. Marcus returned with the cape and, with careful gestures, began preparing for the delivery. No showmanship this time, just service. Evelyn held the key tightly. Its weight was small, but its meaning was immense. Hours after delivery, Evelyn was already home, sitting on the modest balcony of her Inglewood apartment, the Ferrari key resting on the scratched wooden table. The new car was parked in the neighbor's borrowed garage, as the condominium didn't have a covered parking space. "Mom, something arrived in the mail. It's in your name, and Mrs. Wellington's name too. It's from downtown. It looks important." Evelyn dried her hands on the dish towel and picked up the envelope. The stamp was from the law firm of Myers and Hudson, the same firm that handled Mrs. Margaret Wellington's estate. Her hands trembled slightly as she tore the edge. Inside was a handwritten letter, in the elegant handwriting she would recognize with her eyes closed. "Dear Evelyn, if you're reading this, it's because you've accepted the inheritance. That puts me at ease. But now comes the most important part. The last part of my wish is simple, but it requires courage. I want you to use part of what I left not only to live better, but to help other women live better too. Dignity is not a gift, it's a seed. Plant it. Margaret." Evelyn placed the letter on the table and remained silent, her eyes filled with tears. "Mom?" Grace asked, sitting down next to her. "What's wrong?" She smiled, trying to hold back tears. "Margaret, she always saw beyond my uniform. What did she say? Who wants me to use part of the inheritance to help other women like me, create something, transform lives?" Grace smiled. "That's beautiful, yes, but it's a huge challenge too. I've never founded anything, never managed a social project, never asked for sponsorship. I've always been the woman who mops the floors, not the one who plans the events." Grace walked over and rested her chin on her mother's shoulder. "But you're the woman who always did the impossible with little. Now you have the chance to do a lot with everything." Evelyn held the letter tightly. "I won't let her down, nor will you." 2 days later, she walked into the mirrored law firm building in downtown LA. It was the first time she'd ridden that elevator as an heiress, not a night cleaner. She was received by the lawyer Mr. Renner, a serious middle-aged man who stood up to shake her hand respectfully. "Mrs. Parker, are you aware of the letter you received?" "I am, and I want to do what she asked." Renner nodded and pulled a leather folder across the table. "There is an additional clause, recorded as part of the will. It does not prevent the use of the amount for personal support, but stipulates that at least $200,000 be invested in practical and verifiable actions to combat social inequality within 12 months. What if I don't comply? This amount is automatically transferred to an American foundation that manages international programs. You lose control over it." Evelyn ran her hand over her forehead. Margaret wasn't kidding, was she? Never. "Well, what if I start, but the money runs out before then?" Renner smiled lightly. She left room for adjustments. "The important thing is that it's real, that it has an impact." She trusted in her ability to do this. With her heart. That night, Evelyn spread paper across the kitchen table, scribbled ideas, Googled statistics, notes from the past. "Grace, help me out here. I need a name for this," the girl thought and said with shining eyes. "Wellington Institute. In her honor. And then, who knows, people might hear the name and remember that a former cleaning lady created it all." Evelyn held back tears. Wellington Institute. For dignity at work. Everything seemed to be flowing, until the phone rang the next morning. "Mrs. Parker, this is First S Legal Department, Harbor Bank. We need to inform you that a member of the Wellington family has filed a partial inheritance dispute." Evelyn almost dropped her cell phone. "What? What do you mean?" "They claim that Ms. Margaret was not in her right mind when she signed the final part of the will. They are requesting that some of the funds be frozen until the case is reviewed. But she recorded a video, signed it at the notary's office. There was a witness, yes, but the process is already underway. And in the meantime, The $500,000 will be temporarily unavailable. Silence. For how long? It depends on the judge. It could be weeks or months. Evelyn hung up slowly. She sat on the sofa and stared into space. Her dream of founding the institute seemed to be slipping away, just as she had accepted the challenge. Grace came running in. "Mom, what's wrong?" "The bank froze part of the money. Her family wants to contest the inheritance. They say Margaret didn't know what she was doing, but she knew. I know, but until they prove it, I can't touch the project's money." Grace sat next to her mother. "So start with what you can. Make it smaller. Use what's left." Evelyn took a deep breath. "Margaret gave me a mission, and no one will steal it from me." She took back the sheets of paper, the notebook, and wrote at the top of the page, "Plan B. Dignity begins with what we already have." 3 days later, the garage of the Inglewood Community Baptist Church became the birthplace of a dream. With her inheritance partially frozen, Evelyn used the remaining $15,000 to start the Wellington Institute, even if it was with folding tables, a borrowed printer, and a simple banner taped together. On the door, a handmade sign read, "Here, dignity has no uniform, only the will to win." The project started small: professional cleaning workshops, household finance classes, information on labor rights, all geared toward women who worked like she once did. On the first Saturday, 6 women showed up. Evelyn offered coffee, juice, and homemade bread. Then she handed out the handout she'd printed herself. "We're not here to teach you how to clean better, okay?" she said, looking each of them in the eye. "We're here to learn to be seen, respected, valued, because no one is going to hand you dignity on a silver platter, but you can demand it with poise, with preparation." The participants were moved. One of them, named Leticia, cried in the middle of the room. "This is the first time someone has called me ma'am and looked me in the eye. Not even in HR at my last company did they treat me like that." Evelyn walked over and took her hand. "We're going to change this, one cleaning lady at a time." In the following weeks, the Wellington Institute grew like wildfire. Grace created an Instagram profile, posting testimonials and short videos of the workshops. A video in which Evelyn looked into the camera and said, "Your work doesn't define your worth. Your character does." Went viral, garnering over 300,000 views in a week. Donations started pouring in, small at first, of $50, $200. Then a businesswoman from Texas called personally. "I saw your story online. It reminded me of my mother. I want to help in any way I can. Can I send laptops?" Evelyn cried into the speakerphone. "You can. Thank you very much. You have no idea what that means." End of story. Yes, that Marcus showed up in the second month, unannounced. "Hi, Evelyn." She stopped typing and stared at him, surprised. "I wanted to volunteer." She raised an eyebrow, a little skeptical. "Volunteer for what?" "To help with anything. Posture classes, public speaking, customer service. I sold cars for 15 years. I know how to deal with people. I can teach that. And so, well, maybe I need to learn a few things too." Evelyn crossed her arms thoughtfully. "Do you know how to clean a bathroom?" Marcus laughed nervously. "I know, but badly. You'll learn. Here, no one is better than anyone else. Can you start Saturday at 8? I'll be here." And she was. She arrived early, carried chairs, served coffee, and mopped the floor. Little by little, she gained the women's trust. At one of the workshops, she even became emotional as she told her story. "I used to be the kind of man who laughed at people who arrived on the bus. Today, I've learned to listen before judging. And thanks to Evelyn, I'm becoming a better man." 3 months later, the Institute had already helped more than 60 women. Some landed better jobs. Others started small cleaning businesses or started studying again. Evelyn used her experience as a former accountant to teach basic financial management. "This is a budget," she said, drawing on the whiteboard with an old marker. In, out, reserve. You don't have to be rich to be organized. You need vision. The news reached local TV. A reporter named Jenna Lopez came to do a story. Evelyn, you started this with almost no money, and now there's a waiting list. What's the secret? She smiled humbly. The secret is to never forget where you came from and never stop reaching out to those who are still there. At the end of the 6th month, Evelyn received a call from the law firm. Mrs. Parker. The judge dismissed the objection. The inheritance has been released in full. You now have full access to the fund. She was silent, her heart racing. Thank you. Thank you very much. He hung up, looked at the ceiling and whispered, Margaret, mission accomplished. The following week, he rented a larger house. He bought living room furniture, projectors, and padded chairs. But he kept the simple sign on the door. Here, no one comes in small. Here, everyone grows. She didn't forget any of the first 20 women. They were all invited to a celebratory dinner, complete with music, testimonials, laughter, and tears. Marcus was in the kitchen, wearing an apron, serving baked potatoes with a smile. Grace filmed everything, already planning to turn her mother's story into a documentary. Evelyn, looking at everything, said quietly to herself, I didn't want to be seen as a millionaire, I just wanted to be seen as a person. And now he was, and he was helping others to be too. 1 year later, the morning began warmly in Los Angeles. The sun shone brightly in a clear, cloudless sky. Evelyn stood in front of her bedroom mirror, dressed in a simple, elegant navy blue ensemble, with the Wellington Institute pin pinned to her lapel. Her hair was tied back in a low bun, and the look in the mirror was no longer that of a woman asking permission to exist. It was that of someone who knew her place in the world. Grace, are you ready? He asked with a smile on his lips. The daughter appeared wearing a floral dress and a camera hanging around her neck. I'm ready since yesterday, she replied excitedly. The girls are already in the cars, and Marcus is ahead with the list. Evelyn grabbed the Ferrari keys and put them in her purse, but instead of driving, she got into one of the rental vans with the other women. The Ferrari, it would be there, parked, as a symbol, but that day what mattered was who was driving it. 20 women accompanied Evelyn, all former Institute participants. They had different backgrounds, cleaners, cooks, caregivers, day laborers. But now they were entrepreneurs, supervisors, small business owners, team managers. Today isn't just my victory, Evelyn said, holding the makeshift microphone in the van. It's the victory of every woman who believed she could do more, and proved it. They arrived at Beverly Hills Motors around 11 a.m. Evelyn got out of the van first. The others followed, forming a sort of dignified procession, all with their hair neatly styled, simple but neat clothes, and upright posture. This time, no one whispered, no one laughed, no one was disrespectful. Claire, the receptionist, now assistant manager, was the first to see it. Evelyn, my God, what an honor to have you back! He ran and hugged her tightly. Evelyn smiled. I came with some friends. We want to see some cars. Claire's eyes widened. All for sale? Not all of them, Grace said, laughing, but a good portion of them, yes. The commotion drew everyone's attention. The room fell silent when Marcus appeared on the other side, now dressed more casually, white shirt, dark pants, no blazer. He stopped when he saw her. Evelyn, he said in a reverent tone, it's so good to see you again. Marcus, he replied, smiling, I came to fulfill what I told you that day. I didn't buy that car to impress. I bought it to remind you of who I was, and who you still are, he said sincerely, and who they are now, she added, turning to the women who accompanied her. They were scattered about, enchanted by the cars. Some were testing the seats. Others were inquiring about financing. Marcus picked up the store's internal microphone and, in a firm voice, spoke, Everyone, today Mrs. Parker returns with what we call a living miracle. Each woman here represents resilience, dignity, and strength. None of them will be treated like an ordinary client. Today, our standard is different. Manager Mitchell approached, shaking Evelyn's hand tightly. You caused more than a change here. You caused a quiet revolution. From the day you drove off in that Ferrari, our team has been trained based on your history. I'm glad to hear that, Evelyn replied. And today we're back not just to buy, but to show off. Show what? Claire asked curiously. That we don't need permission to be someone, just opportunity. The shopping has begun. Leticia, who previously didn't even know how to open a bank account, chose a Honda Civic financed with the profits from her hospital cleaning micro-business. Sue Lee, who was a babysitter, bought a used car to start her school transportation cooperative. They cried, laughed, hugged each other. I never thought I'd walk into a store like this to buy something, Leticia said, pen in hand ready to sign. But now I know I can walk into any place because I'm my own boss. Evelyn watched it all with tears in her eyes, not because it was a dream, but because it was reality. Grace recorded everything with her camera. Mom, we have to turn this into a movie. One day, maybe, he replied. But for now, we live. Before leaving, Evelyn made a point of visiting the same corner where she had been humiliated a year earlier. She stopped, looked around, and called out to Marcus. Remember this place? Every detail, he replied, without hesitation. And today, this is where I learned to shut up and listen. Marcus smiled. Thank you for that. Evelyn held out her hand. Thank you for changing. He squeezed firmly. As she left, Evelyn got into the red Ferrari, now with pride, no longer with pain. The other women followed her in their cars. The line took over the street. Simple people with real victories, won with sweat, courage, and support. In the rearview mirror, Evelyn saw the showroom fading away. But in her memory, she knew that day would be remembered by everyone, not as the day she bought a car, but as the day she revolutionized the value of invisible people. Months had passed since that day at the dealership, but the impact of Evelyn's story continued to reverberate throughout the city, and far beyond. The Wellington Institute, which began in a church garage, now occupied a two-story building in the heart of Inglewood. It boasted fully equipped classrooms, a welcoming reception area, a library with computers, night classes, and free daycare for mothers who had nowhere to leave their children. On the front door, a new brushed steel plate, Wellington Institute for Dignity at Work. Here, no one is invisible. Evelyn Parker's story had been featured in 3 newspapers, 2 television stations, and recently, a university in San Diego invited her to give a lecture on leadership and social impact. She almost refused, out of embarrassment, but Grace was blunt. Mom, you don't know how many people need to hear from you that it's possible to get off the ground. You can't keep this story to myself. She went. That night, in an auditorium of over 300 people, Evelyn took the stage with her shoulders straight and the microphone in her hand. My name is Evelyn Parker, and until recently I was invisible. She told her story simply, without embellishments, but with soul. At the end, she received a standing ovation. A teacher approached and said, Mrs. Parker, I've never seen my students so quiet while listening to anyone. She smiled. That's because I don't talk about theory. I talk about life. Meanwhile, the Institute continued to grow, now with support from local businesses, partnerships with technical schools, and even partnerships with international NGOs. Marcus, he was officially promoted to Social Responsibility Manager at Beverly Hills Motors. He was now coordinating initiatives with the Institute and giving talks to newly hired employees about empathy in customer service. In one of these talks, he said, I laughed at the wrong woman, and she taught me more about sales, dignity, and leadership than any MBA. And Grace, she was about to enter college. She was accepted into law school with a full scholarship, inspired by her mother, by her struggle, by her story. I want to be a labor lawyer, Mom, to fight for those no one listens to, just like you fought for me. Evelyn couldn't hold back her tears when she heard this. I thought my mission was to buy a Ferrari, but my real mission was to turn other women on. One morning, Evelyn arrived early at the institute. The place was still empty. She walked through the quiet hallways, ran her hand over the tables and the handouts, and stopped in front of the wall where the photos of the first 20 women who had been treated were displayed. He smiled. He took a marker and wrote underneath the mural, "The revolution begins when someone has the courage to say, 'I was invisible, but I was never weak.'" She turned and looked out the window. The sun was rising, bathing the building in golden light. The red Ferrari was still in the garage, but now Evelyn knew the car was just the beginning. The legacy was the road. End of story.